Jamie Bartlett joins us too. Jamie, afternoon to you. I mean, this is a very wide subject. There's obviously a lot of speculation and, you know, many of those experts around this case were sort of having to almost guess what might have been a motivating factor. But I know you've looked into the dark web. And from what I understand, and when I've spoken to other journalists who've tried to sort of dip their toe into this territory, you really do have to search to try and find, you know, the really grim stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. The darknet itself is relatively easy to actually get on because it's a place that actually people go there for all sorts of reasons. Journalists use it quite often, for example, when they want to stay hidden. And I've spent a lot of time on the darknet, and most of it is, you know, there's a lot of criminal activity there. You've probably heard about drugs that are bought and sold, stolen data and identities. But it is quite hard to navigate. It's hard to find your way around. It's not like the normal internet. And I have never seen some of the videos or content that's been discussed that Girl X was supposedly viewing, sort of torture and murder and that stuff. I've never seen it. I've heard about it, and I've heard stories of the authorities finding these forums and these videos and managing to get them down. But it's not something that you would stumble upon. You really would have to know how to navigate it and know what you were looking for.
So it's possible that, as distinct from specifically finding, I don't know, you know, video, even live, you know, we hear about live streaming all manner of horrendous things, and I don't know whether there's ever any proof of that. I think you're kind of alluding to the fact it's talked about a lot, but actually seeing that is something else. But forums that discuss this kind of stuff, I would imagine they're more accessible, not even just on the darknet.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, so the so-called red rooms that where live streaming of torture and murder takes place. It's always been discussed as something that exists on the darknet, but it's been a bit of an urban legend, really. People have struggled to actually find them. And that's partly because, frankly, when you're a journalist trying to investigate it, you don't want to find it. You don't want to see it. There's a lot of grim stuff down there already. You don't want to see that stuff, and you might even get yourself into legal troubles if you did. But yes, in terms of the language, the sort of things that you'll find people talking about and discussing, I mean, down on the darknet is pretty much anything. Yeah, but equally, you can find some pretty grim stuff on the normal internet as well.
True.
And I think what the person before was talking about, and others have mentioned it too, is the sort of disinhibition that can come with spending a lot of time looking at videos and content and people discussing things. Can almost inure you to the severity of what you're doing. It can make things seem very, very normal. And I've seen that happen a lot with people that spend a lot of time in very dark corners of the internet.
I find it as well with, and that's a really interesting point about how we kind of desanitize ourselves from the brutal reality of things that were half an hour ago were really shocking. I mean, if you look just on Twitter, when you're flicking through, you don't only see tweets and videos of people you follow, you see stuff that they've retweeted of people they follow, etc. I've lost count of the amount of times, almost on a daily basis, you see a fight outside a school, on a school bus, that kind of thing. But these are brutal. These aren't, you know, people having a scrap and a push and a shove and a kick in the shins, and a load of kids standing around saying fight, 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 as it used to be, you know, in the old days. This seems to be something more, and there's a lot of that content. It doesn't even appear to be taboo to some people. And remember, every time you see one of those things, there's another kid there filming it, so, and probably more than one. So I wonder whether we've kind of, not even under the light of a silvery moon, in broad daylight, we've kind of recalibrated levels of acceptability. And that must penetrate the minds of younger people, perhaps, more dangerously than it would perhaps a fully grown rational adult.
Yeah, I think one way you can look at the internet as a whole, and I don't just mean the darknet, is the way that it sort of lowers the barriers of entry into finding stuff that really should be reserved for adults. And even for us adults, we can find things that normally would have been very difficult for us to see. You're right, you don't need to go onto the darknet to see gruesome videos of people getting killed. And I've seen plenty of those as well, all over the normal internet.
Sure,
and you see one, suddenly you're being shown more and more and more. And it is incredible how quickly you get used to this stuff and it starts to feel normal. I spent a lot of time on self-hate and self-harm forums on the internet for my book. And I started off being absolutely shocked with what I was seeing, the images. I couldn't bear it. An hour later, it all seemed perfectly normal to me.
Yeah.
And I think that effect, it's hard to really put it into numbers or study it because it sort of pervades everything. But we are becoming a nerd to certain things. We see it a lot. It's not that it causes people to
Yeah.
do terrible things, but for people who might be thinking about it or people that might be open to those ideas, it can drag them into this rabbit hole where it starts to feel quite normal.
In a way, perhaps it previously wouldn't have done. There's no pause button as there used to be, maybe. We've rewired what is acceptable, perhaps. Listen, Jamie, we will speak again soon. Thank you for that thorough stuff from Jamie Bartlett, author of The Dark Net, with us here on Talk TV.